Hello, hello, hello. This is the DMZ America Podcast with Ted Rall, syndicated cartoonist, coming to you from the left.
And syndicated cartoonist Scott Stantis coming to you from the right. So now we have American soldiers on American soil pointing their guns at Americans.
Well, it's all in the family.
Well, last time that happened was a big old civil war, but that turned out okay, I think.
Yeah, nothing much happened there. That's fine.
Yeah, it was 4 years, mild disagreement. Things worked their way out. The aftermath was smooth as silk, and everyone lived to be happily ever after.
Well, that's what I like about America. Everything gets settled. Ultimately, we're reasonable people for whom violence is always a last resort.
Always. I can't tell you how many people
as many presidents of both parties have told us repeatedly, there's no place for violence in American politics.
Unless there is.
Unless they're busy declaring war.
Well, there's that, but that's on people. That's not us. In all seriousness, this is an egregious abrogation of all things normal in the United States. And
well, you should describe what is this for the people in the future who are watching this in the radioactive rubble of their city. What are they talking about? What
could they possibly mean?
I don't understand.
For those of you who are just coming out from under your rocks, there have been protests against ICE, fairly violent or fairly vigorous ones, some violence, but nothing that local police officers couldn't have handled. In Los Angeles particularly, and it's exploded. And then Donald Trump, the current president of the United States, decides to send in not just the National Guard, several thousand of them, but also 700 U.S. Marines from Camp Pendleton, which is just 2 hours south there in San Diego. Ted, have you seen the photos? I'm not sure who's leaking them of the I'm making air quotes here. Always good podcasting deployment. Have you seen it?
I have not.
It didn't. This will give you nothing but faith and total understanding of how we have not actually won a war in 70 years. They didn't, and sending the Marines up to Los Angeles, they didn't establish where they would sleep, how they would sleep, how would they eat, and where they would poop.
I mean, okay, maybe, we know I'm a retard, but Los Angeles does have good restaurants. Many of them. I've eaten with them. I can recommend El Coyote, one of my favorites. El Cholo, even better.
700 Marines showing up to Shay's Frou or something up there in Hollywood. They deserve. Sure, it's probably the best food they will have had in quite some time. But the pictures are hilarious. It's like they did not think any of this through. This was clearly Don Trump going, I think we need to make a big, beautiful statement. Hopefully someone will get shot. Fingers crossed, because that's what he's aiming for, right? No pun intended, but that's what he wants. He wants this to be Kent State. You tell your story about your former governor when you were living in Ohio during the early 70s.
Yeah, so I was a kid when this happened. Wasn't it like 1971 or 1972?
70.
70. That's right. It was 1970. So I was 7 years old. I believe it was in May when it happened. But basically, for students at Kent State University, which is a small state, medium-sized state college in northeastern Ohio, sort of south of Cleveland, were protesting they weren't all protesting the Vietnam War. There was a protest against the draft and against the Vietnam War and all things establishment in general and university and college university policy. And the James Rhodes, the president, the governor of Ohio at the time, dispatched the National Guard, and he ordered them to shoot some kids to send a message that the chaos on Ohio's college campuses would no longer be tolerated. It wasn't like go there and make sure things don't get out of control, go there as a show of force. It was like, no, go and shoot some kids. And they did. They followed orders. They shot 4. They really only meant to shoot 2 or 3. The really famous photo of the young woman who's like distraught on one knee over the body of a kid, depicts this. She wasn't. I don't even think she wasn't even attending Kent State. I think she was just sort of hanging out, floater, and he wasn't either. He was a high school kid attending. He was visiting the campus, did not attend the protest, was not political in any way, shape, or form. He just was, high school kid there on college visit day to see if he wanted to attend Kent State, touring the campus. So the bullet was a stray, from several hundred yards away, and it just struck him. So obviously, they shot a lot of bullets that day, right? So they used the same weapons that they were using in Vietnam on these kids. It's interesting. I was in high school. I guess about less than 10 years later. And even then we were warned. There was a tradition of wearing black armbands to school every anniversary of the Kent State shootings. And we were always warned by the principal over the loudspeaker in the morning announcements not to do that. So of course we all did.
Of course.
And
of course.
And some of us were disciplined and suspended or given detentions or whatever. But basically, it was a very powerful. Kent State was a very powerful thing. I mean, you didn't have to be from Ohio or be into the Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young song I think it's just called Ohio, For Dead in Ohio, to understand the gravity of it. And there was something. Even though Nixon's presidency went on through controversy for years afterwards, I feel like there was something of his soul, his political soul, taken away in that moment, even though also Nixon had nothing to do with it. It's really not Nixon's fault. I'm sure he disapproved of it. It wasn't his kind of thing.
What did Governor Rhodes say immediately after? Was he
pretty much, he was. Governor Rhodes was a controversial figure after that. He was very right-wing. They made a statue of him that repeatedly kept getting hit by angry people with their cars. I don't know if that statue is still there, but it was always desecrated. If any man does not deserve, any Ohioan does not deserve a statue, it's Jim Rhodes. And
but this is on the heels of, you had been having protests now, up to 1970, it had been going on for well over 4 years at that point. Yeah. 68 obviously was a boiling point, but the 70s were more of the 60s than the 60s. For those of us who lived through them, I can tell you that that's the truth. And so they were having protests, and the protests got progressive because the protesters, the way they protested got more and more sophisticated as they did it more and more. And it was to get and elicit a reaction. And this, the tear gas. I had just moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and we lived less than maybe about a mile and some change from the University of Wisconsin campus. They had violent protests twice a week, easily. And you could, you'd go a few blocks from my house and you could smell the tear gas. This got middle America thinking, by gum, you know what? You shoot one or two of them. This bullshit's going to stop. Truly, that was, and that's happening now that, you see this pack of people protesting to protect illegal immigrants, people who've broken the law. They're waving the Mexican flag, which I still to this day think is maybe the dumbest thing, the second dumbest thing I've heard since defund the police. And there is a sentiment in the country, you shoot one or two of these people, they're not going to be so anxious to embrace their immigrant brothers and sisters and fight ICE. Let's go back. Let's go look at what ICE does, Ted, and you and I are equally, aghast at if someone in military garb wearing a mask and a bunch of them show up at your doorstep without a warrant, without identification. I don't let them in, Nor should you. Nor do you have to. I want to be very clear for anybody who's undocumented or worried about being approached by ICE, who are watching us today. If someone comes to your door and claims to be ICE or any other law enforcement agency, but particularly ICE, they're not police officers. They're administrative officers. They wear stuff that says police,
but my cat can wear things that say police. It doesn't make him
and sometimes
a cop.
does.
And that he does. But like you're not a cop just because you wear a thing that says police on it. And they're not cops. They cannot, you don't have to open the door for them, nor do you have to open the door for a cop, actually. So you can say, do you have a...
Unless there's a warrant.
Sir, or ma'am, do you have a warrant? And if they have a warrant, it's like, please slide it under the door and I will read it. And if it is a legal, lawful warrant for the correct address, then you have to let them in and cooperate peaceably and do everything that they say. You still don't have to talk to them. You don't have to cooperate. You have to cooperate. You have to, if they want to search your premises, you can't resist or anything. But they do have, the point is they have to have a warrant. If not, you can tell them, with all due respect, go fuck yourself and never come back. And so they can come back.
But they don't.
But if they don't, but whatever. The point is, you should not cooperate with that. Without.
We seem to have lost Ted. So as Ted was going to say, I'm sure you don't have to cooperate. You don't have to. I was just finishing what you were saying. And you do have to listen to everything Scott Stantis says as the God's given truth.
As God, as though you were a God, not that you're not a God.
I'm a God, as to quote Bill Murray character from Groundhog Day.
Right.
I'm not the God. I'm a God.
Yeah, right, correct. And that's right. And I've always thought of you as at least a minor wood nymph. But
thank you.
But I mean,
so you don't have to open the door, but
don't open
the images were the images.
But
were
the point is, like, if someone,
assholes.
I got to tell you, if someone approaches me in the street, they don't identify themselves. They say, "Oh, I'm a cop," and they don't identify themselves, and they don't have, their face is covered, and I'm going to view them as a physical threat. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. And I would suspect that if they came down to all the rednecks in America who are cheering this stuff, did you see the convoy that's going to California to help them?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you think that's real, or do you think that there's so much dis and misinformation on the internet?
Oh God,
do you think
so
that's
much.
Old? Do you think that's like an old thing from 2020 or something?
I thought from the 1920s.
Well, from the 1820s. But I was wondering.
Hooverville moves west.
It looks like a Trump rally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. So you may be absolutely right. But when I saw that video, I'm like, that doesn't.
I don't really believe it. First of all, that was yesterday. And, I know the traffic on the 5 can be bad. But,
yeah, they'd show up.
Yeah.
But if you look at the map, you and I talked about the aftermath of the 2024 election. And I, studied a lot of the different state maps. California was fascinating in that, the coastal areas voted overwhelmingly for Harris. But the number of counties that went for Trump in California was really kind of shocking. And if you have a moment, go back and look at that. So you could see a caravan, like you said, coming from the Imperial Valley of California and driving down to LA. But I have to believe if you're law enforcement, you've got to. George Washington, of all people, hated militias. He thought they were a pack of fools. They were drunken morons with guns, which is, he wasn't wrong. He really wasn't.
Right.
When he finally had a professionally trained army, that's when he was having success, and he liked, winning. So what happens? Where are we now? Is this as I think it was Governor Newsom said, that this is, of a small dictatorial moment. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think Governor Newsom's a buffoon, by the way. Not a fan.
Buffoon versus fool. Who will win?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's WWE Tard edition. So the thing about Newsom so first of all, Newsom filed a lawsuit that stands absolutely, there's no pretense that this will work, right? Like, Donald Trump has every right legally to do what he did, to federalize the National Guard and send them
I think you could make an argument that he didn't, because the way the law is structured is it has to be an insurrection, invasion. What was the third component, Ted.
Well, or a threat to, I think it's a threat to public order, which is what this would be.
No, that wasn't it.
But you're thinking of the Insurrection Act. There's two separate deployments here. And what I'm talking about is the first thing that happened, which was Trump federalizing the National Guard for the first time that a president did that since 1965 without the cooperation of the local governor. That's what the lawsuit is about. I think Trump has every legal right to do that. And then there's what you mentioned at the top of the show, which is sending in the troops from Camp Pendleton, regular U.S. Marines, in order to, chew bubble gum and take names. That there's probably no legal basis for because of what you're saying, but there's no lawsuit there. So I guess what I'm complaining about here is that Newsom and Trump are both involved in political theater. I mean, Trump is pretending that LA is a hellhole that is burning to the ground with a bunch of communist insurgents from Nicaragua and Mexico waving Mexican flags, and they're taking over the city and everything's burning, and the poor ICE goons and the LAPD desperately need help, and he's there to help. None of that is true. And Newsom's pretending like he's kicking ass and he's going to go after Trump with everything he's got. That's not true either. There's things he could do. He could send the state police down there to confront the Marines and tell them to back off. He's not doing that.
No, he's not. I mean, I think Newsom, he wants to be president of the United States. He's made that abundantly clear. His last 6 months, what was it, 6 months ago, Ted, 10 months ago, when he decided that, there's a homeless problem. We probably need to do something about that. And
right.
And this is a guy who was also,
which is to say, sweep it under the rug.
Of course. Well, yeah, just move them so you don't see them. He was mayor of San Francisco, by the way, when that issue got worse and worse and worse and worse. Now he's governor, and I still can't possibly imagine what his slogan would be running for president of the United States. He'll do to the United States what he did to California. It's people, for the first time in the history of the state of California, more people moved out than moved in last year. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all you need to know. It's still a massive state, populous state, fourth or fifth largest economy on the planet. If it broke away from the United States, it'd do just dandy. But getting back to how they're handling these issues in Los Angeles, there's always people who are not going to follow the nonviolent acts. They're going to, and I'm not entirely sure, Ted. Now, the ICE went into this building, right? And they arrested a bunch of allegedly illegal
and some legal U.S.
Of course, citizens. Yes,
Yeah.
Of course they did. Mm-hmm. But then they got surrounded, right? And then and that's why they sent the National Guard in to get to spring the ICE agents out,
which is hilarious.
That's kind of funny. It really is, for a pack of unarmed, disorganized people to hold ICE who have and they show up and they all look like fucking Darth Vader. They all in black. True. They're covering their faces, which I think is like, hey man, you went into law enforcement. This, I could, they could find out who I am. Yeah. They should. That's how constitutional democracies work. I don't want some masked entity entering, a public space and demanding that you follow its authority. Fuck you. That's about as un-American as I can possibly. Ted, I am absolutely furious about this, and I'm hurt. I'm kind of devastated that, you and I have talked about the end of the American empire, the end of America, the American experiment. And that doesn't mean America goes away. From a historic standpoint, we talked about the Netherlands. For 150 years, they ran the world. They were the big swinging dick on the planet. And they had, East India Trading Company, all of that. They were the economic and military power. And then until they weren't. Mm-hmm. They're still around. Amsterdam's lovely if you like bicycles and canals. They didn't disappear, but they ceased to be the world power that they had been. That's what's going to happen here. And I'm not sure, do we devolve into a dictatorship? Do we devolve into a Hungarian style government structure, Ted? I mean,
I think there's already been like major moves in that direction, right? I mean, there's been we've already seen the militarization of local law enforcement. We've seen the assertion by the Obama Attorney General that Americans could be assassinated at the order of the president on American soil by a drone. Our rights are vanishing by the second. And I was looking at the results of this poll. CBS just released a poll that said 54% of the American public currently supports the mass deportation orders. 43% think it's making the country safer. 30% say less safe. This is very skewed, as you'd expect, by party. 93% of Republicans say yay, but 18% of Democrats also say yay. But at the same time, and I think this kind of goes to what you and I are arguing. I think it's only lunatics really believe that you should be able to illegally immigrate to a foreign country, right? And that basically if you sneak into Kazakhstan and the Kazakh authorities find that out, and they deport you, which is what would happen. No one would be surprised or confused, right? So I think that's how most people with common sense see this, right? It's like, well, if you came here and you don't have papers, or you had papers but they expired, well, then you need to leave, right? That's just the law. That's common sense. But how you do things matters, right? So, if you say that like jaywalking in LA is illegal, that's fine. But if you beat people up who try to jaywalk, that's going a little far. If you charge them with misdemeanor and send them to jail, that's going way too far. And similarly, according to the same exact poll, 63% of respondents said that non-citizens should be guaranteed a court hearing, and 79% said it's unacceptable to mistakenly deport a U.S. citizen. Now or U.S. resident. Now that might seem like nice, but I'm like, who are these 21% who think it's okay to mistakenly deport someone? And who are the 37% who think that non-citizens aren't entitled to a court hearing? Everybody's entitled to a court hearing. That goes back 1,000 years, right, to the Magna Carta. Everyone is entitled to due process. It's not a privilege. And one of the things that drives me crazy about this whole thing about these raids is, well, they're illegal immigrants, and illegal immigrants should just have no rights and should just be tossed out. First of all, they do have rights, but more to the point, the cops and ICE don't know that they're illegal immigrants. They just go in and just randomly shake down brown people in places where illegal immigrants presumably. Look, I would do the same thing if I were an ICE mook and I was looking for illegal immigrants. I'd go down to Home Depot and by the train station in East Hampton, where the day laborers are waiting to get work. I would. That's where they be, right? But it's not. But what makes sense is not necessarily what's legal or constitutional, and I think, and with good reason.
Yeah, listen, I want to take half a step back here, and people listening say, hey, I thought Stantis was on the right. Okay, so now he's for, willy-nilly immigrants just coming over the border. I go, no, that's absolutely not what I stand for. I'm libertarian on many issues. Ted's family members were immigrants. Many of my family members were immigrants. So I have sort of a soft spot in my heart for them, and I see the value they bring to the country. However, you don't just open up the borders. The Biden administration, again, this is Biden's fucking fault, by the way. I think it's important to point out and drag Biden back into this, that this is his fault because a law had Trump's name on it, he got rid of it. And Trump did the same thing with Obama. It was childish and stupid, but he also opened up the borders and allowed 11 million additional human beings to come into the country. And that's too many. That's not viable. That's a sovereign country can have sovereign protected borders and should. It has to, or it's no longer sovereign. That's where I stand. I also believe in the small L liberal immigration policies to allow people to come in because it grows the economy. It allows people who are under duress, who are living under, just horrible, grinding, dictatorial regimes to come to the United States and fulfill their potential. And that's has always been the draw and the dream of the United States for millions and millions of people.